In January 2002, Yorkshire Police discovered the body of a young Korean woman in a metal suitcase. This gruesome discovery prompted an investigation that led to the arrest of one of the country's most horrific killers. Kyu Seo was born in South Korea in 71 or 72. There is very little information about his personal life, but it is known that in September 2000, after a failed marriage, he traveled from his country to London with the intention of learning English in the British capital. However, in October 2001, the man gave up his studies and began to earn a living by renting out 2 apartments. An apartment on Eagle Street near Holborn, known as London's legal district, and a duplex on Gasta Street in the Poplar neighbourhood. To promote his business, Kim advertised his services on a website. Most of his guests were visiting students, and many were Koreans like himself. At the time, Kim had a girlfriend named Marika Ishimura, a young woman of Japanese descent who worked as a hairdresser. The couple lived in the master bedroom of the Eagle Street apartment, with 2 Korean female tenants occupying the second room. Those who knew Kim often described him as a kind, polite and helpful man who was always smiling. He was charming to everyone, but especially to young girls. Somehow he managed to make people believe that he came from a wealthy family and was himself in a comfortable position in terms of income and lifestyle. However, it was all a deception. In reality, Kim's finances were a mess. He had a huge amount of debt, and all of his credit accounts had been cancelled. In addition, he and Mariko were frequently using illegal substances. By October 2001, their relationship seemed to have fallen apart, and the young woman, who was almost 10 years younger than the man, spent almost no time at the apartment. It was in this context that Kim met Jin Hyo-jong, a girl from the South Korean province who was staying in the apartment he was renting for just 3 days. Jin was studying French literature at Korea University and, as part of her degree program, spent several months as an exchange student at the University of Lyon in France. After graduation, she decided to stay a couple more days to sightsee in Paris and London before returning to her home country where her brother and parents were waiting for her. Jean arrived in the English capital on Wednesday, October 24, 2001 and was scheduled to return to France on Saturday, October 27. She found Kim through his ad on the internet and arranged with him to rent a room in an apartment on Eagle Street. However, the girl's plans were interrupted in the worst possible way and her short life was cut short horribly and unexpectedly. On the night of October 26, the day before she returned to France, the 21-year-old girl was brutally attacked by Kim. Details of the incident were never revealed, but it is known that when they were left alone, the man ended Jean's life by wrapping duct tape around her face, making it impossible for her to breathe. He also bound her wrist. However, before putting her through this ordeal, Kim forced Jin to name her credit card passwords, information he intended to use later. He then stuffed her into a metal suitcase that he hid in the master bedroom closet. There the man kept it for the next 5 days. When other guests returned to the apartment that same Friday and asked where Jean was, the man told them that she had decided to return to France the day before and he had taken her to the train station. A similar story, but with some changes, he told to the girl's friends and relatives, who began to approach him with great concern when Jean did not return to France on the appointed date and seemed to have disappeared without explanation. On Saturday, October 27, a day after the horrific crime, Kim took 2 of his victims' cards and began emptying her bank accounts. First, he tried the South Korean Kookmin Bank card, which was a family account. It had been opened by Jin's parents for emergencies and had never been used by her. The first attempt at the theft failed because the man entered the PIN code from the card incorrectly. But a few days later, Kim tried again and managed to withdraw £1,990. The man tried to withdraw more money, but Jean's family account had already been emptied. The other card belonged to a French bank where the girl had kept her personal savings for her stay in France. The man gave this card to a young Korean woman who asked to go to Paris and withdraw as much money from it as possible. Although this request should have raised suspicion, Kim made up a story that the card belonged to Mariko, his girlfriend, and also made up a reason why he needed to withdraw money in Paris. Apparently, his excuse was convincing enough for the girl to agree to honor his request. In fact, it was much more sinister than that. Kim not only wanted to get all of his victims' money, but also tried to back up his story that Jean had gone to Paris. And to do that, he needed to make it look like the girl had used her card in the French capital. He wanted to leave a false trail for the authorities, who would undoubtedly soon launch an investigation into the student's sudden disappearance. Late in the evening, Wednesday, October 31st, Kim took the suitcase containing Jean's body and put it in the trunk of a parkade-taken car. He then drove nearly 4 hours to the village of Askia in North Yorkshire. There, on the bark of a country road, he dumped the suitcase with Jean's body and then returned to the apartment. Kim carried on with his life as if nothing had happened. He rented out rooms and repeated the same excuses whenever anyone who knew the victim asked about her. Between November 17th and 18th, a young Korean woman named Song In-hye moved into Kim's duplex on Gasta Street. At first, she shared the master bedroom with a friend named Moon. But a few days later, on November 29, Moon had to return to her native Korea, and her friend was left alone in the apartment. Those who knew Moon described her as an outgoing girl who always had a smile on her face, and her family considered her a model daughter. Information about her studies is somewhat contradictory. Some sources say that she studied hotel management in London, while others claim that she studied at Korea University and came to London to learn English. During their stay at the duplex, Sun and Kim became friends and became very close, but it was never clear if there was any romantic or intimate relationship between them. However, some people who saw them interacting described them as brother and sister. In addition, Sung's friend later revealed that the girl told her that she thought Kim was attracted to her, but never commented that the feeling was mutual. Nevertheless, on December 3, 2001, Kim asked all the tenants of the Eagle Street apartment to vacate the premises, including Marika, with whom he was no longer in a relationship at that time. He then left the apartment himself and moved to a duplex on Gasta Street, where Asen was living. In the next few days, they maintained a close relationship, and the girl did not suspect that behind the outward appearance of a kind man hides a real monster. The last time the dream was seen alive on December 7, when she dined at a Korean restaurant with Kim. The girl could not have imagined what tragic end awaited her in the coming hours. Kim did the same thing to the dream as he had done to Jin a few months earlier. He used duct tape to bind her wrists and ankles, and then stuffed a sock in her mouth and taped her mouth and nose shut. As a result, the 22-year-old suffocated and died a slow and agonizing death. Following the same pattern, Kim made sure to fish out his victim's bank details before proceeding with his heinous plan. He then hid the body in a closet in the hallway of the duplex, which he sealed so that no one could open it. Sun's body remained there for months. When acquaintances of the girl asked about her, Kim said she went to work at a hotel, where she was given a place to live. Seon also had 2 bank accounts, one at NatWest and one at Kookmin Bank in Korea, which was also a family emergency account and which the girl used only once. Kim used the NatWest card to withdraw £240 from an ATM. The man used the money to book a ticket to travel to Toronto, Canada on December 13. Before leaving, Kim used the girl's Korean card to steal a total of £1,200. Kim was able to get to Toronto unhindered and there rented an apartment where he again started renting out a room, repeating the same business model as in London. The man planned to stay in Canada for a year or two, and it seemed that he had escaped the consequences of these 2 heinous crimes. However, the story was far from over. While Kim continued to live his life by strangling Jean, disposing of her body in a suitcase, her loved ones never stopped looking for her. When she did not return from England in time, her friends in France contacted her relatives in Korea. Unable to find the girl, her brother posted information about Jen on a Korean missing persons website. It was there that she was later spotted by a Korean policeman who was studying at a university in London at the time. That she turned out to be another of many missing people caught the officer's attention because a few days earlier, the lifeless body of a young girl of Asian or Oriental descent was reportedly found stuffed into a suitcase. That discovery occurred on November 18, although it was later determined that the suitcase was first seen 2 weeks earlier. However, since it was a rural area with few people, no one alerted the authorities until one of the locals tried to pick up the suitcase. And when he couldn't pick it up, he deemed it suspicious. Police arrived on the scene at night, and when officers shined a flashlight on the suitcase, they saw human eyes and hair. The suitcase and its monstrous cargo was taken to Yorkshire morgue, where it was finally opened. There they discovered the body of a girl, practically naked except for her bra. The victim's height was just over 150 centimeters, and her limbs and head were wrapped in duct tape. Authorities immediately noticed the peculiarity of the tape used. It was not ordinary, but decorative, dark blue in color with a distinctive printed pattern of men's faces. They soon discovered that it was a ribbon designed by London-based artists Gilbert and George, which went into production in September 2000 and was sold only at the British branches of the Tate Gallery in London, Liverpool, and Cornwall, and authorities determined that a total of 850 units had been sold. This information would prove crucial to the investigation. On examining the body, the pathologist was struck by the lack of injuries indicative of a struggle and concluded that the victim must have been immobilized in some way before her head was bound. He offered two possible explanations. The first suggested that the girl had been drugged with some substance that was not detected in the toxicology test. And the second, that the victim was somehow coaxed or threatened into letting her wrist be bound. The coroner's report began with the results of the hair analysis, which confirmed that the victim was a native Southeast Asian. However, police were unable to identify her from fingerprints and dental records. It was not until January 2, 2002, that they were able to identify the victim, after a Korean police officer who had seen the missing Jin report and the discovery of the body in the suitcase contacted Yorkshire Police to alert them to a possible connection. Police contacted the Korean embassy and were able to access the South Korean fingerprint database and subsequently identified the victim as Jin Hyo-young. A short time later, on December 17, 2001, Sung Yoon-hae was reported missing by friends who were unable to contact her. On January 7, 2002, the Metropolitan Police's Serious Crime Directorate learned of the identification of Jin's body and decided that the cases might be connected. Police and Yorkshire detectives therefore carried out a joint investigation led by Chief Constable Alan Ankers. As the dream was initially reported missing but no body had yet been found, officers came to investigate Jean's case. Thanks to information provided by friends and relatives of the victim, they were able to trace the girl's movements, up to and including her stay at an apartment on Eagle Street. There, authorities discovered a roll of the very tape used to bind and strangle Jean. Forensic investigators found traces of the young Korean woman's blood on the adhesive material, as well as on the baseboards, walls, sofa and carpet in the room. As for the disappearance of Sleep, police were aware that she had been living as a lodger in a house on Gasta Street. Upon investigating both that property and the Eagle Street property, officers discovered that the Obimi was operated by Kyu Seo, who was also in Canada at the time. Analysis of the man's phone records revealed that he was in the North Yorkshire area where the suitcase had been dumped. A search of the car that Kim had rented in October 2001 also revealed traces of Jean's blood. With all the evidence pointing to a common link between the victims, authorities had a prime suspect. On January 17, 2002, the Metropolitan Police showed a joint press conference by North Yorkshire Police, asking for any information about both girls. However, as fate would have it, Kim briefly returned to London and the man was arrested at an internet cafe that same evening. He was charged with the murder of Jin Hyo-young and was immediately taken into custody. On January 21, he appeared before the magistrate's court, where his lawyer requested bail, but the application was denied and the accused was remanded in custody pending trial, which was due to begin on the 28th of that month. However, as is often the case, the trial date was postponed to a later date. In the meantime, the investigation into the disappearance of the dream continued. On March 14, 2002, a construction worker named Paul Meehan was renovating the bathroom of a duplex on Gasta Street when he noticed a large number of flies flying out of one of the panels. This seemed suspicious to the man and he reported it to the authorities. The next day, the police came to the house and found a sealed closet in the hallway. Inside was a stack of foul-smelling clothes, and behind it was the naked body of a girl wrapped in a duvet cover. It was later determined that the remains belonged to Sun and Hee. Police had already visited the duplex on January 9, 2002, during the initial investigation, but they only found clothing belonging to the first victim. Officers failed to notice the sealed closet in which the second body was hidden. It soon became apparent that the decorative tape that had been used to wrap around the face, wrist, ankles, and sleeper was the same as that worn by the first victim. In this case, the lower part of the face was compressed with such force that the eyes were protruding from the eye sockets. It is worth noting that no signs of sexual assault were found on either victim. Additional DNA tests were conducted on items hidden in the closet and it was discovered that some of the clothing items and a pair of shoes belonged to Jean. On April 4, 2002, Kim was charged with Sung's murder and was ordered to appear at the Central Criminal Court on May 7 to confess. At this hearing, Kyu Seo, with the help of an interpreter, pleaded not guilty to the murders of Jin Hwa-jong and Sun En-hae. Although the trial was scheduled for September 30 of that year, it was not until March 2003 that the defendant went on trial. Kim refused to answer questions during cross-examination and then did not testify at trial. On the second day, in the presence of the jury, the defendant pleaded guilty to manslaughter in the murder of Song. Kim stated that it was an erotic game with a tragic but accidental ending. However, the court did not accept this guilty plea and the trial continued. Kyu Seo was never able to explain why he committed the two crimes. In front of the jury, prosecutor Jonathan Laidlaw questioned the defendant's possible motives, saying that he could have been driven by intimate problems as well as purely financial ones, as Kim was heavily in debt. He also raised the possibility that the man could have committed such atrocities only because he took pleasure in slowly and painfully taking the lives of both girls. The prosecutor was careful to emphasize the horror that both victims must have experienced in the last moments of their lives. Also on the witness stand was pathologist Christopher Milroy, who was part of the team that examined the bodies of the two victims. The expert stated that the way Kim cut the girls' lives short was something he had not seen in any case. Mariko Ishimura, a former defendant, then testified. She stated that the decorative tape used to commit the crimes belonged to her and that she had bought it from the tape gallery in London for use on special occasions. Kim Young-gong, a friend of the defendant, then spoke. The man told the jury that in late 2001, he accompanied him to buy a suitcase that was allegedly for his girlfriend's belongings. However, the witness said they ended up not buying any because they were too expensive. Finally, on March 25, 2003, Kyu Seo was found guilty of murdering two young female students and sentenced to 2 life terms. After the verdict was announced, the judge addressed the defendant and called his crimes exceptionally brutal. He said that Kim cut short the lives of 2 innocent people who trusted him and considered him a friend, and that he did so in a particularly brutal way that must have caused the victims unimaginable suffering. What are your thoughts on this story? Please share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you for watching.